1. I'm about to tell you the story of how I came across a cult performing what I believe to be a ritual in the middle of nowhere in the UK. To preface this, I'm a 5'9" male, 23, and live about an hour's drive from the thick area of dense woodland. On weekends, I go to the woods to walk my dog of an evening. This happened in December last year, but even in the winter months, when it's dark early, I never feel scared. The woods are so secluded, I don't think I've seen a single person walking through them like me, so I figured it's safer than most parks. It was a Saturday evening as I recall, and I parked in a lay-by about a 5-minute walk from the woods. It was about 7 PM and was completely dark, the thick black blanket covering the trees. My dog, used to night walking, is super confident at night and was leaping and jumping all over the place. I won't say that I noticed sooner, but if I said that, I'd be lying to you. As I was deep into the woods, I could see a soft orange glow light in the sky from between the treetops. I actually noted how weird this was, but for some reason, alarm bells weren't ringing and I continued walking with my dog running ahead. A couple of minutes later, there's a steep hill that's very slippy, even when it's not been raining for a while, and there are nettles and brambles scattered unevenly across the hillscape. I tied my dog back to his leash, as I always did on this hill. And thank God I did, because otherwise, things might not have panned out as they did. I could see the glow was becoming more intense in the night sky, and I correctly assumed it was a fire. I was avoiding the area and considered calling it in. This isn't as unusual as you'd think. I live in the UK and forest fires are practically non-existent, and even if someone lights a fire on purpose, the awful weather tends to put any threat to bed. Because of this, I decided not to call it in and assumed it could be a camper or a party or something. This theory was reinforced as, when I was about 100 yards away, through the thick branches, I saw what appeared to be a large bonfire, and I caught a glimpse of at least 2 people near it. Like I say, I didn't think the situation was sinister in any way and just assumed these people were enjoying a good time. Despite this, I kept my dog on a close leash, mainly because I didn't want him running over and disturbing the revelers. However, over time, things only got weirder. We kept roughly the same distance, but through the trees I could hear distant chants. They sounded tribal in nature, but I'm no ethno-musician, so I can't really say for sure. I thought this was weird as, although I shouldn't stereotype, I figured a group of people partying in the woods would be playing pop or dance music. I was beginning to get an uneasy feeling, the classic feeling of being watched. I'm usually a man of reason and put it down to the unknown group off in the distance. Maybe they had seen me. Maybe they were harmless and didn't pay me any mind, but still, I decided to head back. I was about 5 minutes away from the hill, which took me back towards my car, when I was sure I heard something behind me. My dog didn't react, but still I paused and glanced over my shoulder. Off in the darkness, I could make out the figure of a man standing next to a tree, looking at me. I stood looking back at him. I didn't say a word. I didn't gasp. I didn't shout. I barely even breathed, as if, for some reason, my steadiness would make me invisible. This obviously was not the case, and the guy stepped forward from under the cover of branches and into a small opening. He was completely naked, genitals and all, and had earthy colours like browns, blacks and burgundies painted all on his skin. He had 3 thick horizontal layers of these paints on his face, so I couldn't make it out too well, and he smiled at me. It wasn't a nice smile. It was sinister, and it revealed a mix of white and black teeth separated by the odd gap and one gold tooth. He then jogged off towards the bonfire. It wasn't abrupt, he just turned away and jogged, quite slowly. I'd love to tell you all I booked the F out of there and called the police, but I decided to follow the guy, curiosity crushing common sense. I kept low in the undergrowth and kept my dog close to me. Thankfully, he's never been a barker, so I didn't have to be worried about that. Soon, I got to a clearing where there were tree stumps of old trees that these guys must have cut down. I stayed in the safety of the darkness, just out of reach of the orange glow, and watched. There were probably a dozen of these guys, all men, all completely naked, all painted. They were all white, yet the art on their skins reminded me of Amazonian tribes or of the Aboriginal peoples of Australia. The guys were all just stood around the bonfire at this point, equal space between each of them. They stood completely still for about 3 minutes when, out of the trees to my left, comes this guy. He's wearing a piece of tattered cloth around his privates and buttocks and walks towards the fire. This guy is super unnerving. He was wearing a deer skull on his head and had eyes painted on his eyelids. He put both his arms out and the whole group linked arms. I was entranced in what I was seeing until the guy with the deer head turned around and looked at me with his eyes closed. Then he opened them and, I kid you not, the rest of the group turned in unison and looked at me. My dog began to growl and I just started running as fast as I could. I could hear pairs of footsteps following close behind and realised they were giving chase. I could literally hear their breaths as I approached the hill. I'm not ashamed to admit I picked up my dog, got about halfway up, slipping and sliding, and then practically threw the poor thing up the rest of it before clawing myself up. My dog was unharmed and was barking as I'd never seen him do before. I quickly glanced down to see 6 or 7 naked men dragging themselves up the hill. Me and my companion kept running right out of those damned woods and to the lay-by. I got in my car and locked the doors. I wasted no time in starting the engine and driving away. As I did, I won't forget what I saw anytime soon. In the tree line, for a few seconds, were all the naked men stood watching me from the darkness. How had they got ahead of me? I had no idea. I contacted the police and even took them out to the tree stumps a few days later, but they've turned nothing up. I believe I ran into a cult that day and I don't know what their intentions were, but my gut said they weren't friendly. I tried to stay away from that patch of wood for the most part. I've now taken a liking to urban parks. 2. I live in a place called Sunderland in the UK. For those of you who have seen Geordie Shore, it's around that area of the UK, and believe me, we're not all like that. Anyway, I'm 38 now and have come to terms with the fact that people like this exist, but I enjoy listening to these scary stories and I figured I should share mine. When I was growing up, we went to a bonfire at a pub near my house. It was a real community thing and all my friends from school and all my parents' friends attended, so it was a really nice thing we had every year. I was about 9 or 10 when this happened and the display wasn't scheduled to start for another hour. The pub set up all sorts of other activities to do though, and it had a kids play area too. I was with a group of my friends and we were on the park just doing whatever it is that kids do when my bestie at the time, Charlotte, proposed we get some toffee apples. Toffee apples were a real treat for us young'uns and the 4 of us were excited for this. There was a designated stall for them in the pub car park. We walked through the crowd and bumped into Charlotte's mum first, and she offered to pay for all of our toffee apples and gave Charlotte enough money to cover all of us. We were thankful and headed round the front to the stall. We got there and there was this massive queue. I'm talking a good 15-minute wait, and as you know, excitable kids and slow-moving queues don't go well, and we were starting to get fidgety in the line. That's when this guy tapped Charlotte on the shoulder. He was a tall, thin, old man with grey hair and a long grey overcoat on. He wasn't scruffy. In fact, he looked fairly handsome for his age, which I would pin down as about 70. He was cleanly shaven and had defined facial features. At first, we thought we were all in trouble for something until the guy asked if we were waiting in line for toffee apples. It was obvious we were, as that's what the queue was for, but we didn't realise that at the time. I also didn't realise till afterwards that the guy was talking rather quietly and kept glancing around. He told us he was the guy who dipped the toffee apples and that he had just finished a fresh batch in the outhouse around the other side of the pub. He said that we should follow him to get some of the fresh new ones and suggested 2 of us go with him. I now realise he didn't want us all to go because it would draw too much attention. Being the naive little girls we were, it was me and Charlotte who offered to go with the guy, and our other 2 friends waited. As we rounded the corner, the side of the pub was cordoned off. I assume for safety purposes, and just before the cordoning was a van with one door open. He told us that apples were in the back of the van and that we needed to go in to pick the best ones. It seemed off to me now. He said they were in the outhouse, not in some creepy looking battered van. Suddenly, all the lessons of stranger danger came flooding back into my head. I froze, but Charlotte didn't. She went over to the back of the van. I tried to shout for her to stop, but my voice choked up in my throat. I looked over at her, seeing her edging closer to the van. This guy really close behind her. She climbed in and this creep went to close the door. I saw my friend's life disappearing right before me, but I was too scared to know what to do. All of a sudden, I heard Charlotte's dad from behind.
"Hey, what do you think you're doing, you creep?"
The guy jumped at the unexpected arrival and ran to his van and started the engine. In a small stroke of luck, Charlotte had heard her dad's voice and poked her head out the back of the van to see why he was there, just as the van pulled away. This caused her to fall forward out of the van, and thankfully she was uninjured. I turned to see all of our parents, and the pub landlord stood there. The landlord was on his phone. I later found out, to the police, and our parents were, understandably, mad. Turns out, after we left with the guy, Charlotte's mum found Emma and Tracy stood alone. She asked where we were and Emma said they went with the toffee apple guy. Charlotte's mum knew there was only one guy making toffee apples tonight, and he was dipping them at the stall. Charlotte's mum raised the alarm with all the other parents and they all began searching for us. Unfortunately, the guy was never caught as his van had no registration plate, and me and Charlotte, not understanding the gravity of the situation, gave conflicting reports on how he looked. Even to this day, we still can't agree. Thankfully, we didn't miss the fireworks, as when the police arrived, they were just halted for about half an hour whilst we gave a statement and they investigated the area briefly. This didn't ruin Bonfire Night for me, if I'm honest. It was a valuable learning experience which taught us both to be more aware. We don't know what this creepy old guy would have done to us if he had managed to kidnap us, but thinking about it sends chills down my spine. Hey guys, Brothers Jackson here. I really hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, don't forget to give it a like and subscribe for more. Also leave comments below requesting any videos that you fancy. And I also just want to give a shout out to Wolfpack Survival, who has helped me a lot over the last couple of months. He helped me with the intro, he filmed the stock footage and made the soundtrack for the videos. It'd be a big help if you just went and checked him out, because he's helped me a load over these past few months. Anyway, yeah, don't forget to give it a like and subscribe for more. Cheers, guys.